Before dawn broke over Chicago's West Side, a voice had already begun stirring a generation. Fred Hampton, a 21-year-old chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, wasn't simply a rising political figure, he was a phenomenon. His speeches electrified crowds. His community programs fed children, protected neighborhoods, and forged alliances once thought impossible. Supporters called him the hope of Chicago's poor. Authorities called him a threat that had to be contained. By 1968, Hampton's rise was meteoric. He united street gangs, students, and working-class families into a single movement he called the Rainbow Coalition. His message was simple: all power to all people. But behind that message was a growing tension. Law enforcement saw the Panthers as dangerous radicals. The FBI's COINTELPRO program labeled them black extremists, tracking their leaders and monitoring their activities. The more Hampton united people, the more attention he drew, and not all of it was welcome. Hidden microphones, undercover informants, and surveillance teams quietly closed in around him. Every speech he made, every plan he drafted, every ally he met soon appeared in FBI files. Yet Hampton remained fearless. With nightly meetings, community programs, and police brutality protests, he pushed harder than ever, gaining national recognition. To many, it felt like he was on the brink of leading a nationwide movement. But behind the scenes, pressure was building. Meetings between federal and local law enforcement intensified. Files were passed, photographs reviewed, and plans quietly drafted. As Hampton's influence grew, so did the unease within law enforcement. Chicago police tactical teams and federal intelligence officers exchanged information with increasing urgency. COINTELPRO memos described Hampton as someone whose rise must be stopped by any means necessary. The tension was undeniable and dangerous. Inside the Panthers, trust suddenly became a luxury. Rumors swirled of an informant planted among them, someone feeding details about the group's meetings, home layouts, and routines. What no one knew then was that an informant working with the FBI had already provided detailed floor plans of Hampton's apartment, including the exact location of his bedroom. Meanwhile, Hampton was exhausted, organizing nonstop, barely sleeping, surviving on adrenaline and belief. He couldn't know the forces aligning in the shadows. Still, he continued holding rallies, distributing free breakfasts to children, and negotiating peace between rival groups. Every act strengthened his community and intensified scrutiny from the outside. On December 3rd, Hampton held a late meeting with trusted Panthers. Laughter filled the apartment. Plans for a major citywide coalition were drafted. It was the last normal night they would experience. Witnesses recalled Hampton unusually tired, drifting in and out of consciousness. Whether from exhaustion or something stronger, he couldn't stay alert. His fiancée, Deborah Johnson, 8 months pregnant, noticed something was wrong. But neither she nor the Panthers in the apartment could foresee what was coming. That night, while Hampton slept deeply in his bed, heavily sedated according to later testimony, law enforcement units assembled outside, weapons ready, orders given, and a raid plan finalized. Just hours before sunrise, the door would splinter open. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. At 4:45 a.m., the silence outside 2337 West Monroe Street shattered. A battering ram hit the apartment door with explosive force. Officers surged inside, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Panthers, jolted awake, scrambled for cover. Some never made it out of bed. Witnesses reported that officers fired almost immediately. Police claimed they were met with gunfire. Yet forensic evidence later revealed something chilling. Nearly 100 shots were fired by police, while the Panthers fired one, possibly by accident as a bullet passed through a door frame. It was chaos. Shouts echoed down the hallway. Furniture splintered. Bullets ripped through plaster and wood. The Panthers inside yelled that they were unarmed, that they had a pregnant woman in the room. But the gunfire didn't stop. In the bedroom, Hampton never stirred. Not during the commotion, not during the shots, not even when officers stepped inside. Deborah Johnson screamed that he wasn't waking up, but officers allegedly pushed her aside. What happened next has been recounted in sworn testimony for decades. One officer reportedly checked Hampton's pulse. "He's barely alive," someone said. 2 more shots rang out. "He's good and dead now," an officer allegedly remarked. The raid lasted minutes, but its impact would last generations. When the shooting stopped, the apartment was riddled with bullet holes. Panthers inside were wounded, arrested, or dead. Hampton's body lay still on the mattress, soaked in blood, untouched by consciousness through the entire attack. Police quickly framed the raid as a violent gunfight. Within hours, Chicago officials held press conferences claiming the Panthers fired first. They displayed seized weapons and pointed to bullet holes as proof of a firefight. The media repeated the narrative, but community members and journalists who visited the apartment immediately noticed something disturbing. The return fire holes were actually nail holes or outgoing police bullets mischaracterized as Panther shots. Evidence markers were inconsistent. Blood patterns didn't match the official story, and the sheer number of bullet casings from police weapons raised questions. Protesters swarmed the apartment before it could be fully cleaned. They photographed everything: bullet trajectories, broken doors, Hampton's blood-soaked mattress. Their findings spread fast and contradicted the official version. Meanwhile, lawyers representing the Panthers uncovered something even bigger. The FBI had been monitoring Hampton extensively through INTLPRO. The informant who provided the apartment floor plan admitted he gave it directly to the FBI, who then passed it to Chicago police. The public narrative began to crack. Churches held rallies. Students marched. Newspapers that once repeated police statements began asking harder questions. Why was Hampton so deeply asleep? Why were nearly all shots fired by police? Why were officers clearing evidence so quickly? A federal investigation eventually confirmed COINTELPRO involvement, revealing the FBI's intense focus on Hampton's political power. Decades later, the U.S. government agreed to a legal settlement acknowledging wrongful actions by federal and local authorities, though never formally admitting assassination. The death of Fred Hampton reverberated far beyond Chicago. To many, it symbolized the vulnerability of movements fighting for justice in America. To others, it exposed the extremes government agencies were willing to reach in their battle against radical activism. Hampton's funeral drew thousands. Supporters, activists, and everyday families he had fed through the Panthers community programs mourned him as both a leader and a martyr. His words, "I am a revolutionary," echoed through packed halls and candlelit vigils. But his story didn't end with his death. It ignited new investigations into COINTELPRO. It inspired generations to question government power. It forced journalists to re-examine narratives they once accepted without doubt. And it strengthened the fight against police brutality, surveillance abuses, and racial injustice. Even today, Hampton's speeches circulate online, reaching millions who weren't alive when he walked the streets of Chicago. His son, born after his death, continues his work. Historians, activists, and filmmakers retell his story, not as a conspiracy, but as a documented chapter of American history. Whether one calls it a raid, an extrajudicial killing, or an assassination, the facts remain powerful and unsettling. A young leader, asleep and heavily sedated, died in a hail of police gunfire during a coordinated operation involving federal intelligence. And the question still lingers: was Fred Hampton killed because of what he did, or because of what he represented? Today, his legacy grows stronger as people search for truth, accountability, and justice.